Hey guys, welcome back. So we are jumping back into Immortal X-Men, and for this one, with us taking a trip back in time with Mystique and Destiny, there's a conversation I want to have about the age of Mystique, which has been referenced a few times. And as we go through this one, I'm gonna bring up some of those references so we can get a bit of a conversation started up in the comments. And with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, we start off in 1943, where we find Mystique breaking into a US military research facility. And with how this is done, I see it as the other side to the story that we got in Immortal X-Men issue 3, when Destiny talked about her first time meeting Mystique, her falling in love, as well as Mystique being her first crucial nexus, which at the time was Destiny's narration, with Destiny telling her perspective. But this time with how it's done, we're hearing Mystique's side, with her expressing her experience of being in a relationship with a precog, who oftentimes doesn't tell Mystique what's going on. So again, it's like two sides of the same coin. And with Mystique sharing her experience, it's done in a way where it also ties into the larger narrative in this flashback, like a story within a story. But with Mystique having her suspicions, this leads her to coming here by her own means, shape-shifting and making her way into Destiny's job so that she can find out what Destiny's been doing. And to get in, Mystique essentially just takes on the form of a pinup model to get the attention of the first couple guards and move in close enough to take these guys down. And for Mystique, it doesn't take too much for her to incapacitate these guys, because for her, even at this point in the early 1940s, it's very likely that she had been fighting longer than these guys' parents have been alive. And I say that because in X-Men Legacy issue 215, Mystique mentioned that she had been in solitude for 100 years, where during that time she never let anyone inside her guard. And really, with hearing that, it's one of those things to where if you align that statement with the timeline of Mystique meeting Destiny in the mid to late 1800s, this would give you a modern day Mystique who's close to 320 years old. And that's putting her 100 years of solitude before she met Destiny, because clearly, in the years after, with Destiny and Mystique being off and on, Mystique was definitely on, with a number of other partners and having multiple children. And last time I checked, that was the opposite of solitude. But once again, it's another one of these situations where it depends on the writer that you're dealing with, because according to Chris Claremont in Uncanny X-Men issue 170, which published March 8th of 1983, in this issue, Mystique had this crazy dream that sent her back to 1783, which was 200 years before that present day, and what was said to be 170 years before Mystique was born, which at the time in 1983, according to the OG source material, that would have made Mystique 30. And if you take it from there and bring it to today in 2023, 40 years later, and that'll make Mystique 70. So yeah, it makes it pretty tough to pinpoint her age as the years go on, but that's something I'll leave for you guys to debate in the comments. And I may also put up a poll in the community section and see which one of the votes take the cake. And I'll just let that be the ongoing investigation where you guys can decide what reference you're sticking to. But with getting back to the story, Mystique beats the mess out of these two guards to where she then takes on the likeness of one of them, using his appearance and clearance to make her way deeper into the facility, where she's surprised to find that Irene has been helping with experiments on mutant children. And at this point, Irene, or Destiny, she makes her way to find Mystique, because obviously she had foreseen Mystique coming here and making this discovery. And with finding Mystique, she initially tells her that she should leave before someone here finds her, but in response, Mystique refuses to leave without getting some kind of explanation. And in response, Irene tells her that she can't share everything, but what she does let her know is that this project is being led by Amanda Mueller, but the true power behind it is Dr. Nathan Milbury, who's actually Mr. Sinister, who had subtly but not so subtly kept the first name. And as it turns out, Sinister is gathering information on the mutant genome, which Irene goes on to say is crucial information, which on one hand, the quote-unquote crucial part of what she's saying goes back once again to issue 3 of this series when Irene spoke about crucial nexuses. But with mentioning this brief rundown to Mystique, she doesn't go too far into that, but rather she lets Mystique know that this is the reason why she's working here, so that she can keep an eye on Sinister's work and eavesdrop on the possible futures. Because at this time, Destiny knew, and also present day Mystique now knows, that this research will eventually benefit all mutants. But as they're walking and talking, and Destiny's explaining all of this to Mystique, she then goes on to let Mystique know that Sinister is going to hide his DNA in certain individuals, families with names like Shaw, Sullivan, Xavier, Marco, Ryking, and the list goes on, so that when he dies, he'll try to take them over. But at this point for Irene, she doesn't see that as a threat, because the futures that she's seen, they've shown for this method to be insufficient, and Sinister failing to pull them off. But even still, the two of them at this point, they know Sinister to be one to be clever and to cheat death. And as Mystique leaves, she thinks of the last time that her and Destiny had seen Sinister cheat death. And even though Mystique hasn't figured out how Sinister did it, she has a feeling that Destiny already knows that answer. But after this, it's here where we then go back 48 years to London in the year 1895. At 221B Baker Street, which really feels like Kieran Gillen is saying that Mystique has been the Sherlock Holmes of the Marvel Universe this whole time, which I guess before was already suggested, because at the time Mystique was in London, posing as a male consulting detective, who initially Destiny hired to help her decode the entries in her diary. And here it goes a step further to say that not only did Irene later work with Mystique, but she also used her mutant powers to make Sherlock Holmes seem like a genius. But it's here where Mystique brings to Destiny's attention the latest news article on the East London murders, where a lucky survivor, Nathaniel Essex, has been found beaten, confused, and stripped of his clothes. So the two of them head over to meet Essex and investigate. And with this being the first time that Mystique had met Nathaniel Essex, she describes her first impressions on his appearance, saying that he looks like a vampire who other vampires feed on. And looking at this guy, it's rather accurate, respectfully. But with them coming here to question Essex about the attack, he asked them to pardon the place for looking so diminished since his wife had passed, but when Mystique, or Sherlock Holmes at the moment, tells Essex that he must miss her, and in response Essex says no, not anymore. Because looking back, he wished that he hadn't wasted his time on love, and instead put more focus and dedication to his research, which at this point in time is mutants in the mutant gene, but he refers to them as Essex factors and Essex men. But with him being questioned about the attack, of which he was the only one who survived, all he says is that he was walking, he was attacked from behind, the root was disturbed, and he survived, which was a very suspicious story because this guy looks like he's 2 or 3 coughs away from the grave, and had this happened the way that he describes, it's likely that he'd been the first to go. And with hearing this, of course, Mystique, she has her suspicions, and Destiny offers to give Mystique a hint, but Mystique refuses because she wants to try something on her own first. And this is what then leads to Mystique walking the streets with the appearance of a helpless damsel, just walking and hoping that this creature would attack her, or anyone for that matter. But this then leads to her hearing a scream in a nearby alley, and when she turns the corner, she then meets Mr. Sinister, who at a first glance is undoubtedly the East London murderer. But seconds later, when Mystique shoots him in the head with an elephant gun, he just takes it and he climbs up the wall with a chunk of his dome missing, to where from there Mystique goes after him, and she makes her way to the rooftop to then see 2 moons in the distance. But as Sinister leaps from one rooftop to the next, she only gets close enough to find out where he's going, because a creature like this has to lay low somewhere in the daytime. And this yet again led her back to the home of Nathaniel Essex, where standing right outside is Destiny, who admits that she's quite curious and she wants to follow up on this revelation. And when they go inside, Sinister then transforms back into Nathaniel Essex, and as he reverts to his more frail form, he tells the ladies to stay back and how it's beyond their understanding, but then Mystique reveals to him that she's a mutant. And it's here where Nathaniel's like, oh, you're Essex men, and instead of correcting him for more desirable phrasing, they tell him that they are, and they ask Nathaniel Essex what is happening to him. And in response, the first thing that Essex says is, I should have never trusted the Egyptian, which of course is him referencing Apocalypse, who prior to this approached Nathaniel Essex because of his brilliant studies in human evolution, which even went as far as him predicting the uptick of mutant births that would come years later. But Essex goes on to explain to Mystique and Destiny the fact that Apocalypse recruited him and mutated him, giving Essex a number of abilities. But later, with Apocalypse out of the picture, these gifts that Essex had began to run wild as a result of Apocalypse no longer being there to keep him tame. And Essex even goes on to say that these gifts are physically killing him, and at this rate he's not sure if he's gonna live to see the 20th century, which for them at the time in this moment is like 5 years. But then Essex begins to ramble on about the war that he sees coming, and how one day there'll be machines that build other machines that build other machines, whether larger, smarter, or more powerful. And granted, amongst these ramblings, he's talking about a lot of things that will come in the 20th century, like Master Mode, a Nimrod, a man going to the moon, other worlds beyond this one. But it's not as if he can see the future. It's more like he's building assumptions on top of assumptions, and those assumptions are spot on. But then it's here where he goes to draw this diamond on the chalkboard, when he then starts to talk about the Essex men, and going on to say that the beast in him will be tamed, and he will go on to see the 20th century, and the next, and the next. and the next. And with seeing this, Mystique asks, why are you telling us this? To where then it's here for the first time. Sinister tells them, one day there will be a war between people like us and people who are not people. We must be on the same side. But then Destiny just knocked him out and they took him over to Bedlam, the psychiatric hospital, just to be clear. But for Destiny and Mystique, with them leaving Nathaniel Essex here to either get better or eventually die from his condition, that night when they left, Essex kept mumbling about being immortal, living forever, for all times, to where then he goes on to say red and black, continuously, 4 times at least, to where that's followed by him saying you're a ghost, repeatedly. But the next morning when Mystique and Destiny come back, they find that Nathaniel Essex had mysteriously died overnight. And with seeing this, Mystique asks the guard if he'll take some money to just say that Essex had walked out safely, and because the guy was about to take it, Mystique kills him because a man who takes a bribe is by definition not trustworthy. But then it's here where we begin to see what Mystique was talking about earlier, because 48 years later, Sinister came back and Mystique was puzzled to figure out how. Because in this moment for Mystique, she had thought initially that this was case closed. Nathaniel Essex is dead and on to the next case. But at the time for Irene, for Destiny, she said that was something that remains to be seen. Because even at this time, Destiny knew that Sinister would be needed to reach the paradise on the horizon, the place that she would tell Mystique to burn down if she was kept from Mystique. And it's here where we see, after the death of Nathaniel Essex, that Destiny goes back to his home, where she discovers, behind the door that was chained up before, 4 empty cloning containers, each with a different suit marked above with a spade, heart, club, and a diamond, which now lets us know that there have been 4 Sinisters out in the wild since 1895, with the Diamond Sinister being the main one who most had believed to be the original Nathaniel Essex since 1985, and the second one that was revealed being Dr. Stasis, who has the club symbol. But aside from that, for the heart and the spade, those we'll get to soon, because as the story continues, they won't be a mystery for much longer. And before we go, I want to give a special shout out to the new patrons: Greg R, Sean H, Darnell R, Fo MD, Kane, Brandon V, and Destin MS. Welcome to the Patreon, and special thanks to all the patrons. Every contribution helps from the top to the bottom. And for anyone who's new here who wants to know how you can help support the channel, I got a link below that'll take you to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.